Imagine waking up one morning to discover that everything you thought you knew about your life was a lie. A letter arrives promising an inheritance from a relative you never even knew existed. But there's a catch, and it's bigger than you can ever imagine. What will you do when the truth changes everything? Stay with me to uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the past. It all began on an ordinary day, much like any other. I woke up early, the sun just beginning to shine through the curtains, casting long shadows on the floor. There was a strange sense of stillness in the air, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. And then it did. A letter arrived that morning. It wasn't an ordinary letter. This one was sealed with a wax stamp, old and faded, the kind you only see in movies. My name was written on the front in elegant script, but it wasn't from anyone I recognized. The return address was from a law firm I'd never heard of, and the envelope felt heavy in my hands as I carefully tore it open. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper. The words printed on it were official, cold, and precise. You have been named as the beneficiary of a substantial inheritance. The letter went on to explain that the inheritance had been left by a relative who had passed away. The amount was staggering, enough to change anyone's life. I could barely believe it, but I wasn't about to throw it away without further investigation. The letter instructed me to visit the family estate to claim what was rightfully mine. At first, I thought it was a mistake. How could this happen? How could someone leave me, a stranger to them, such an enormous fortune? Was this a scam? But the law firm's name checked out and everything seemed so official. As I sat there, holding the letter in my hands, I felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. What kind of family was I being pulled into? And why hadn't I ever heard of them before? The letter also came with a set of instructions. I had to go to the family estate in person. The idea of traveling to a place I had never heard of was unsettling, but the allure of the inheritance was too strong. I packed my bags and set out, my mind racing with questions. As I made my way to the address on the letter, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The estate was located in a remote area, surrounded by dense trees and a long, winding road that seemed to go on forever. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I knew I had no choice but to go forward. The inheritance was waiting, and I couldn't let that chance slip away. When I finally arrived at the estate, the house loomed before me like something out of a storybook. It was a large old mansion with ivy creeping up the sides and windows that seemed to watch me as I approached. The air was thick with silence, and I felt a chill run down my spine. This was no ordinary house. This place had a history, and I was about to uncover it. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding in my chest. A butler answered, his face expressionless. Without saying a word, he led me inside. The house was grand, but there was something eerie about it, like it hadn't been lived in for years. The floors creaked under my feet as we made our way down long, dimly lit hallways. The butler didn't speak, only guiding me toward a large study at the end of the corridor. The study door opened with a creak, and I stepped inside. It was exactly as I had imagined, dark wood paneling, shelves lined with dusty books, and a large desk at the center of the room. Behind the desk sat a lawyer, his face stern but not unfriendly. He motioned for me to sit. "Welcome," he said, his voice deep and gravelly. "I'm Mr. Blackwell, and I assume you've come to claim your inheritance." I nodded, still unsure of what was happening. This didn't feel real. "Before we proceed," he continued, "there are a few things you need to know. The inheritance comes with certain conditions, and these conditions must be met in order for you to receive your share." My mind was racing. What conditions? Why hadn't the letter mentioned this? Mr. Blackwell handed me a thick stack of papers, each one filled with legal jargon that made my head spin. As I scanned through them, the details of the inheritance began to unfold. There was more to this than money, much more. The first condition was straightforward. I had to live in the estate for at least a year. That wasn't too much to ask, I thought. But then the next condition struck me like a punch to the gut. The inheritance was not only monetary. There was a family heirloom, a priceless artifact that had been passed down for generations. And this artifact, it seemed, was tied to a secret buried deep in the family history. If I wanted the inheritance, I had to uncover the truth behind it. As Mr. Blackwell spoke, I felt my anxiety rise. The more I learned, the more it became clear that this was not just about money. There was something dark hidden within these walls, something I wasn't prepared to face, but the pull of the inheritance was too strong. I had already come this far. The family has kept secrets for a long time, Mr. Blackwell said, his voice lowering. And you must be prepared to uncover them. Not all of them will be pleasant, but the truth will change everything. As I left the study, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just stepped into something much bigger than I had imagined. The estate was full of secrets, and now they were mine to uncover. The letter had promised me an inheritance, but it also promised something else, a journey into the heart of a family's darkest past. The truth is out there, hidden somewhere in the shadows of this mansion. But what will I uncover next? And is the inheritance worth the price of what I might lose? Don't go anywhere. The next part of this story will blow your mind. Stay tuned, because the secrets are just beginning to unravel. As I stepped out of the study and into the grand hallway, the weight of Mr. Blackwell's words hung over me. The truth will change everything. What could he have meant by that? This was supposed to be a straightforward inheritance, a financial windfall that could set me up for life. But now, everything felt wrong. The mansion, the strange lawyer, the cryptic letter, none of it made sense. I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself. The first thing I had to do was unpack and get settled. I was now a resident of the family estate for the next year, a strange and surreal thought. I couldn't help but feel like a prisoner rather than an heir. The idea of living here felt more like a sentence than a gift, but I had no choice. The inheritance depended on it. The butler led me to my room, a spacious suite with high ceilings and a large bed that looked like it belonged in a palace. The room was elegant but cold, and it had the same musty smell as the rest of the house. I unpacked my bags, trying to ignore the growing unease in my chest. The silence in the house was deafening, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside, seemed to echo with the presence of something unseen. Later that evening, I decided to explore the mansion. There had to be answers here, hidden in the corners of this place, and I wasn't about to wait for Mr. Blackwell to tell me what they were. The hall stretched on endlessly, with doorways leading to rooms I dared not enter. The air was thick with history, and not all of it was good. As I walked, I passed a large portrait of a man I didn't recognize. His eyes seemed to follow me, and I shivered. The painting looked old, possibly 100 years old, and yet the man's gaze was piercing, almost as if he knew I would be here. I turned down a corridor that led to a library. The room was vast, its shelves lined with leather-bound books and ancient scrolls. I moved slowly, afraid to disturb the dust that had settled over everything. There was a sense of reverence in this room, as though the books themselves held secrets too powerful for the world outside. I scanned the titles, but one book in particular caught my eye. It was a thick, red-covered tome with no title in the spine. I pulled it from the shelf and blew the dust off the cover, revealing the words, "The Legacy of the Blackwood Family." I opened the book, and immediately, the words on the first page seemed to jump out at me. The Blackwood legacy is built on secrets. The truth lies hidden, but it can never be fully buried. Those who seek it will be marked forever. My heart skipped a beat. What was this? A warning? A clue? I turned the page, desperate to know more. The next few pages were filled with names, long-forgotten ancestors, some of whom I recognized from the family tree Mr. Blackwell had shown me earlier. But there were also strange symbols and notes that didn't make sense. My curiosity only deepened. What had happened in this family's past? Why had they left me this inheritance? And what was it about these symbols? Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the library. I snapped the book shut and looked up, heart racing. It was the butler, his face expressionless as usual. "Dinner is served," he said, his voice cold and emotionless. I followed him to the dining room, where a lavish meal was waiting. The table was set with fine china and silverware, but the atmosphere was anything but warm. I sat down, the silence between us heavy and suffocating. The butler did not speak, and neither did I. There was an unspoken tension in the air, as if we were both waiting for something, waiting for the other to make the first move. As I ate, my mind wandered back to the book in the library. I couldn't shake the feeling that it held the key to everything. If I could just decipher the symbols and the strange notes, maybe I would understand what this inheritance was really about. But the more I thought about it, the more questions I had. Why had my family hidden this from me? Why had they chosen me to inherit this legacy? And what did I have to do to unlock its secrets? The next morning, I woke early, the desire to uncover more overwhelming. I couldn't sit idly by and wait for the next step to unfold. I needed to take control of the situation before it consumed me entirely. I made my way back to the library, determined to learn more about the Blackwood legacy. Hours passed as I pored over the book, trying to decipher the cryptic symbols, but nothing made sense. I felt like I was missing something important that was just beyond my reach. Frustrated, I slammed the book shut and stood up, pacing the room. And then I noticed something. At the bottom of one of the pages, there was a faded map. It looked like it had been drawn a long time ago, the ink smudged and barely legible. But it was a map of the estate, every room, every hall, every secret passage. I leaned in closer, studying the map. It showed a hidden room beneath the mansion, a place that wasn't listed on any of the estate's official blueprints. My heart raced. This was it. The room I had to find. If there was any chance of uncovering the truth, it was hidden there. I grabbed the map and rushed out of the library, my mind racing. The journey to the truth had just begun, and I wasn't about to stop now. As I followed the map's clues, my heart pounded in my chest. I could feel the walls closing in, but the closer I got to the hidden room, the closer I got to the truth. What was waiting for me down there? Stay tuned, because things are about to get even darker. Don't go anywhere. With the map clutched tightly in my hand, I hurried through the mansion's winding hallways, my footsteps echoing in the silence. The estate felt different now, heavier, like it had come alive with every secret I uncovered. Each room, each shadow seemed to carry a weight, a presence that I couldn't quite explain. The walls, once welcoming, now seemed to stare back at me with a knowing gaze, as if they were aware of the journey I was about to undertake. The map led me to a narrow staircase at the back of the house, hidden behind a false wall in the kitchen. I had walked past it countless times without ever suspecting that it was there. The staircase spiraled down into darkness, the faint smell of mildew hanging in the air. I hesitated for a moment, my heart racing in my chest, before forcing myself to take the first step. As I descended into the unknown, the air grew colder and the silence grew deeper. It was as if the world above had been left behind, replaced by something much older. The walls were lined with thick cobwebs, the faint light from the dim hallway above casting strange shadows on the ground. I could barely make out the shape of the stairs beneath my feet, and the further I descended, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. When I finally reached the bottom, I was met with a heavy iron door, its surface scratched and worn. There was no handle, only a keyhole and a strange symbol engraved into the door's center. I pulled out the map again and examined it closely. The symbol on the door matched the one I had seen in the book in the library. This was it, the hidden room. The key was right in front of me, and now I just had to find a way to unlock it. I searched my pockets, but there was nothing that could fit into the keyhole. Then I remembered the letter I had received, the one that started all of this. I dug it out of my bag and unfolded it carefully. There in the margin was a small, almost unnoticeable symbol, the same one that was on the door. Could this be the key to unlocking it? I hesitated, unsure of what I was about to do, but there was no turning back now. With trembling hands, I pressed the corner of the letter into the symbol on the door, and to my surprise, the door clicked open, revealing a small, dimly lit room beyond. I stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind me, plunging the room into darkness. For a moment, I could hear nothing but the pounding of my own heart, but then a low hum filled the air, and the faint glow of candlelight appeared in the distance. The room was small, with stone walls and an arched ceiling that made it feel like a tomb. At the center was an altar, covered in dust and cobwebs, but it was the object on the altar that caught my attention. It was a large, ornate chest, its surface carved with intricate designs. The chest was still shut, but I could see faint traces of something, blood, perhaps, staining its edges. My breath caught in my throat as I realized that this chest was the key to everything. I approached it cautiously, my hands trembling as I reached out to touch the chest. As soon as my fingers made contact, a jolt of energy surged through me, and the room seemed to come alive. The candles flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls, and the air grew thick with the weight of something ancient. It was as if the chest had been waiting for me, as if it had been calling me here all along. I stepped back, my mind racing with questions. What was in the chest? And why had it been hidden here for so long? My gaze shifted to the walls, where I noticed strange markings, symbols like the ones in the book. But these weren't just random markings. They seemed to tell a story, a history of the Blackwood family that had been lost to time. The symbols spoke of power, betrayal, and a legacy that had been carefully guarded for centuries. But what did it all mean? I ran my fingers over the symbols, trying to decipher them, but the more I looked, the more I realized that I wasn't the first one to seek the chest. There were signs of old bloodstains on the walls, and the ground beneath me was littered with remnants of torn clothing, as though someone had been here before me. Someone who had tried to unlock the chest and failed. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that the chase had claimed more than one victim. I stood there for what felt like hours, trying to piece together the puzzle, but the more I thought about it, the more the answers seemed to slip through my fingers. The Blackwood family secrets were deeper than I had imagined, and the chest was at the heart of it all. But I had no idea what was inside, or what it would mean for me if I opened it. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. A soft, rustling sound like someone moving in the shadows. My breath caught in my throat, and I turned around quickly, expecting to find the butler or someone else from the estate. But there was no one there. The room was as empty as it had been before. I took a step forward, my eyes scanning the darkness, but there was nothing. As I turned back to the chest, the room seemed to shift around me. The walls closed in, and the air grew thick with a suffocating presence. It felt as though the room was alive, watching me, waiting for me to make a choice. I knew then that I couldn't turn back. I had come too far, and the chest had chosen me. I had to open it, no matter the cost. With one final, shaky breath, I reached for the chest's lock and twisted it. The sound of metal scraping against metal filled the room as the chest slowly creaked open. My heart raced as the lid lifted, revealing what was inside. And what I saw left me breathless. It wasn't gold or jewels, as I had expected. It was a single weathered document covered in dust. I pulled it out carefully, my hand shaking, and unfolded it. The writing on the document was in an old, unfamiliar language, but one word stood out above the rest: revenge. What did the document say? And how is revenge tied to the inheritance? The room is full of secrets, but I've only just begun to scratch the surface. What will happen next? Keep watching, because the answers are darker than anything I could have imagined. The word revenge seemed to burn into my mind as I held the document in my hands. The paper was old, brittle, and the ink was faded, but the meaning was clear. This wasn't just a family heirloom or a piece of history. It was a warning. The Blackwood family didn't just leave me an inheritance. They had left me a curse. The chest was not meant to bestow wealth. It was meant to draw me into a legacy of revenge, of unresolved blood feuds and ancient vendettas. But why? Why me? My fingers trembled as I held the document up to the faint light. The words on it seemed to swirl before my eyes. It was as though the language itself was shifting, morphing into something I couldn't quite understand. My head spun as I tried to make sense of it. What kind of revenge had been planned all those years ago? Was it connected to the mysterious inheritance, or was this a separate matter altogether? And what did it mean for me now that I had unlocked the chest? The room seemed to close in around me, the shadows growing longer and more oppressive. The air felt thick, as though the very walls were watching me, waiting for me to make a move. I had no choice but to press forward. The document was the key, but I still didn't understand what it was leading to. My mind raced as I wondered how far this would go, how far I would go. I folded the document carefully and stuffed it into my pocket. There was no time to waste. If the Blackwood legacy was truly tied to revenge, I had to figure out how to stop it. But what did that even mean? Revenge against who? And why had my family allowed such darkness to fester for generations? The answers were slipping through my fingers, but I knew I couldn't stop now. I had to keep going. I turned back to the altar, hoping there might be something else I had missed. The chest was empty now, but the markings on the stone beneath it caught my attention. The symbols that had covered the walls of the hidden room were now etched into the altar, forming a pattern that seemed strangely familiar. I bent down closer, trying to make sense of it, when a loud noise echoed from the hallway behind me. I froze, every muscle in my body tense. The sound was faint at first, like the rustle of someone's footsteps, but it grew louder and more distinct. Someone was coming. I quickly stuffed the document back into my coat and turned toward the door. My heart pounded in my chest as I strained my ears, listening for any clue as to who or what was approaching. The footsteps stopped abruptly, and the door creaked open, revealing a shadowed figure standing in the doorway. It was the butler. His face was expressionless, as always. There was something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before, something that wasn't quite right. "You've been in there long enough," he said, his voice cold and distant. "It's time to leave." I didn't move. I couldn't. Something about him felt different, as though he knew more than he was letting on. I had trusted him once, but now I wasn't sure I could trust anyone in this house. This mansion, this estate, it was full of lies, and I had only begun to peel back the layers. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What does all of this mean? What was in the chest?" The butler didn't answer right away. He just stared at me, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word, he stepped aside and motioned for me to leave. "You should rest," he said, his tone softening slightly. "There is more you need to learn, but not tonight. Come, the house is waiting." I hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to press him to demand answers, but I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. I had already learned that this house didn't give up its secrets easily. If I was going to uncover the truth, I needed to play their game for now. I followed him out of the hidden room, back into the winding corridors of the mansion. The air felt heavy with tension, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. We walked in silence, and I could feel the weight of the butler's presence behind me like a shadow that wouldn't leave. When we reached the main floor, he led me to a sitting room where a fire burned softly in the hearth. He gestured for me to sit, and I did, although I could feel my nerves on edge. I couldn't stop thinking about the document in my pocket, the revenge that was tied to my family. There was so much I still didn't understand. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to leave until I had the answers I needed. "You're not like the others," the butler said, his voice low and contemplative. "The ones who came before you, they didn't ask questions. They just accepted what was given to them. But you're different. You want to know the truth. And you'll find it. But be warned." He paused, his eyes locking with mine. "Some truths are better left buried. And once you know them, you may wish you hadn't." His words sent a chill down my spine. What did he mean by that? What was I about to uncover? I couldn't stop now, not when I was so close to the truth. But what if he was right? What if the truth was something so dark that it would change everything? "I'm ready," I said, my voice steady despite the fear that gripped my chest. "I have to know." The butler nodded slowly. "Very well. Then you'll need to go back to the library. There's something you missed." I stared at him, confused. "The library? I've already been through it." He gave me a knowing look. "Not everything is as it seems. The answers you seek are hidden in plain sight. You just have to look a little closer." I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. The library was where I had first found the book, the one that had led me here. Could there be more? Were there other clues that I had overlooked? Without another word, I turned and made my way toward the library. My mind was racing, but my determination pushed me forward. I had to find the answers. I couldn't let this mystery consume me, but I knew that it already had. When I arrived at the library, the door creaked open, and I stepped inside. The room was just as I had left it, the shelves lined with dusty books, the faint smell of old paper in the air. But this time, something was different. Something felt off. I couldn't explain it, but I knew the answers were here, hidden in the stacks. I began to search again, my eyes scanning the shelves. But this time, I wasn't looking for a specific book. I was looking for something else, something that would make the pieces fit together. And then, as my fingers brushed across the spines of the books, I felt it, the familiar weight of something unusual, a book that wasn't like the others. I pulled it from the shelf, and when I opened it, I found what I had been searching for. The final piece of the puzzle. What did the book reveal? And how is the Blackwood family's legacy even darker than I imagined? The answers are closer than ever, but so is the danger. Don't miss what happens next, because the truth is finally within reach. I stood there, frozen, staring down at the book in my hands. The moment I opened it, I knew I had found the key to everything. The book felt heavier than it should have, and as I flipped through the pages, a chill ran through me. It wasn't just a book. It was a record of everything that had happened to the Blackwood family, a detailed account of betrayals, murders, and the twisted web of deceit that had been spun for generations. The words on the pages weren't just a history, they were a confession. The Blackwood family had been cursed, and that curse had been passed down through every generation. The inheritance I had received was no blessing. It was a trap, a means to bring me into the fold of something far darker than I had ever imagined. I scanned the pages feverishly, reading about the pact made long ago between my ancestors and a powerful, secret society. They had traded their souls for wealth and power, and the cost of that deal was high, so high that it left the family plagued with bloodshed and misery. The revenge mentioned in the document, the word that had haunted me, wasn't just for a single wrong. It was for the entire family, a vengeance that had been simmering for centuries. I stumbled back, my head spinning. The legacy was not just one of riches and power, it was one of damnation. The chest, the hidden room, the inheritance, it had all been a ruse. A trap set by my ancestors, designed to bring someone like me into their world to carry on their twisted legacy. And now I was the one who would have to bear the weight of their sins. As I read further, I came across a chilling passage. The heir must choose. The legacy of the Blackwood family cannot be passed without blood. The first sacrifice must be made to ensure the continuation of the pact. My heart skipped a beat. What did that mean? Was it asking for a literal sacrifice? Was I supposed to kill someone to keep the family's power alive? I could feel the walls closing in around me, the weight of the family's dark history pressing down on me. The house, the estate, the people who had once lived here, it was all part of the curse. And now I was tied to it. There was no escaping the legacy. The more I learned, the more I realized that there was only one way out, and it was something I could never have imagined. I slammed the book shut, my mind racing. The inheritance wasn't just a financial windfall. It was a curse, a trap that would drag me into the family's violent past, whether I wanted to be there or not. The truth of the Blackwood family's power wasn't in the money. It was in the blood, in the sacrifices made to keep their empire alive. I felt the presence of someone behind me, and I spun around. The butler was standing in the doorway, his expression cold and unreadable. "You've uncovered the truth," he said softly, almost as if he had been waiting for this moment. "You understand now, don't you? The curse, the sacrifice, the legacy." I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest. "What do you mean? What do you want from me?" I demanded, my voice shaky but defiant. "I don't want this. I didn't ask for this." The butler didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with something dark, something ancient. "You don't have a choice," he said. "None of us do. The Blackwood legacy doesn't just live on through wealth or power. It lives on through the blood. The first sacrifice has already been made, and you are the one who must make the next one." I felt a wave of nausea hit me as I realized what he was saying. The curse was real. The pact was real. And I was now part of it. There was no escaping the role I had been forced into. The inheritance was a lie, and I had been drawn into it, just like everyone before me. "What do you want from me?" I asked again, this time with more force. "Tell me. I need to know what I'm supposed to do." The butler sighed, as if he had expected this question. "The time has come for you to make your choice," he said. "You will either continue the legacy and take your place among the Blackwoods, or you will choose to break the cycle. But be warned, breaking the cycle is not without its cost." I stared at him, trying to comprehend what he was saying. Break the cycle? Could I even do that? How could I undo centuries of bloodshed and greed? Was it even possible? You can't change the past, the butler continued, as if reading my thoughts. But you can choose what happens next. The Blackwood family has been built on lies, on blood. But if you choose to walk away, if you choose to break the curse, you will lose everything. You will lose the inheritance. You will lose the power. You will lose the legacy. But you will gain something far more important. Freedom. The word hung in the air, heavy and oppressive. Freedom. But at what cost? Could I really leave all of this behind? The wealth, the power, the family legacy, could I truly walk away from it all? Or would I be condemning myself to a life without meaning? I looked down at the book in my hands, the words haunting me. The sacrifice had to be made. But did it have to be my own? Was there another way? I wasn't sure. All I knew was that the Blackwood family's curse was my curse now, and it was up to me to decide what I would do with it. The butler's eyes never left mine as he waited for me to answer. "The decision is yours," he said softly. "But remember, once you make it, there's no going back." I stood there in the dim light of the library, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. What kind of life would I lead if I chose to accept the legacy? What kind of person would I become if I did the unthinkable and walked away? Finally, I closed the book with a decisive snap, my mind made up. I would break the cycle. I would not let the Blackwood family's dark legacy control me. It was time for me to make my own path. As I turned to leave the library, I could feel the eyes of the mansion on me. The walls seemed to tremble, the floors groaning beneath my feet, as if the house itself was angry that I had defied its centuries-old legacy. But I didn't care. I was free. And no matter what happened next, I would never be a part of the Blackwood family again. The decision has been made. But what happens when the legacy you inherited is one you can't escape? The answers you've been waiting for are here, and what I do next will change everything. Stay tuned. The end is just the beginning. As the final pieces of the puzzle fall into place, I can feel my heart pounding in my chest. The Blackwood family's legacy, the secrets, the blood, the curses, everything is finally out in the open. But the more I discover, the more I realize that the truth is far darker than I could have imagined. The choices we make shape the future, but sometimes they also trap us in the past. I thought I could escape the darkness, but it's always one step ahead, waiting for the next move. I stand at the edge, on the verge of a decision that could alter my fate forever. Walk away, and the legacy is gone. Stay, and I become a part of it, forever tangled in the web of betrayal and blood. I've made my choice, but with it comes the unknown. It's a gamble, a leap into the abyss, but sometimes the only way forward is through the dark. As I prepare to leave the mansion behind, I can't help but wonder, will I truly escape the curse? Or will the Blackwood family's legacy continue to haunt me even after I've walked away? The power, the wealth, the revenge, it's all part of a bigger plan, a plan that's been unfolding for generations. But now, it's my turn to take control of my destiny. I look back at the mansion one last time, knowing that the decision I've made will define the rest of my life. The door is closing behind me, and I can't go back. But I can walk forward into the unknown and leave the past where it belongs, buried in the shadows of the Blackwood legacy. But remember, sometimes the past never truly lets go. If you enjoyed this mystery, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. And make sure to subscribe so you never miss an update. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Also, drop a comment below. What do you think happens next? Will the Blackwood legacy continue, or will it be destroyed forever? I love hearing your theories, and you might even see your comment featured in the next video. Share this with friends who love suspenseful stories, and thank you for being a part of this journey. Until next time, keep questioning the truth, because you never know what secrets lie hidden. Like, subscribe, and comment. You don't want to miss what happens next.